This is television for the Isles of Scilly, brought to you with Worldwide Financial Planning, Truro and Penwith College, and the Scilly Lottery. From Radio Scilly, this is scillytv.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's been my pleasure to be invited to invite the Lethbridge family along to the naming ceremony of the Matt Lethbridge, our Sea Fisheries patrol vessel. And there's a bit of history attached to this, and I just thought I'd give you a little potted history of how we got from Sea Fisheries to here. I know we've all got our own sort of special memories of Matt and what he achieved over his 44 years of RNLI work. But my early memories of Matt was when I was doing an apprenticeship way back in 1954. Lobster fishing fell into a decline and fishermen were forced to get winter jobs. And Matt went to work with Les Green and his team in the steamship company offices, and I was an apprentice and I was part of that team. So that's where I got to know Matt and the humour that he had and what a special man he was. And we shared many funny moments together. I do remember his banging on about the islands not being represented by a Fisheries committee. We came under Cornwall. Occasionally we'd get a visit from a Sea Fisheries vessel, the Squirrel being the most prominent, where Pat Greenlaw first visited the islands, and then he became resident here and raised a family on the islands and became a member and a former chairman of the council. But Matt's determination to actually see the Sea Fisheries committees established was taken on board by the council, and in 1970 we had our first Sea Fisheries committee. We had a very small budget, about £5,000 I think used to operate our Sea Fisheries budget. But the previous government, they tried to remove us as a Sea Fisheries committee. They wanted us put in with the larger southwest, and I was determined that we should remain and retain our independence, and thankfully we did. Sea Fisheries then went under another transformation, and we've morphed into an IFCA, an Inshore Fisheries Conservation Authority. And with that come a lot more responsibilities. There will be a lot more for the authority to do, but thankfully it's backed up by quite a considerable amount of money from the government. So we've got money in the kitty now to actually operate the IFCA. And in addition to the money that we've got to actually run it for the next 4 years, we were given a grant to buy this rib as a fishery patrol vessel. And I think it was Steve Watt, our maritime officer, who came up with the idea that we should recognise it and call it the Matt Lethbridge. And I applauded that. I thought, what a wonderful idea that we call it the Matt Lethbridge. Our little Sea Fisheries Committee was very conservation minded, and one of the things that we did, we invested right early on. I think we were the first Sea Fisheries Committee to invest in the Padstow lobster hatchery, long before it actually came into fruition. And then it became established, and they started rearing young lobsters in their under scientific conditions for release back into the sea. And we took Matt over there one day. We actually had a meeting, a Sea Fisheries Committee meeting, and we took Matt with us, and we went over to Padstow, and we had the meeting up in the top room, and then we were all shown around the area down below where the animals were bred. And fascinating little things, about the size of your thumbnail, perfectly formed, all in little individual boxes. And scientists have worked out that they're best released back into the area they come from. So the conservation that's taken place, that when a buried lobster is caught now, instead of the fishermen scrubbing the berries off or taking it home and putting it in the pot to eat, they are landed and they are looked after now. They're taken for them to be bred in the normal way. And those lobsters are released back into the sea. We've had 2 drops here. About 1,500 fish altogether have been dropped back in the islands that have been released here to sustain our fishery stocks. The abiding memory of Matt, when we were leaving to go through security at Newquay Airport, we got there and Matt was there with his white cap on, his RNLI badge and his smart jacket and trousers, and as we went through security there was a loud beep, 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 back, go through again, beep, 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 what you got on you? Well, only me knife, he said. So they said, well, you can't take that with you. So Matt said, I'm never without it. He said, every time he said, this is my best bib and tucker knife. He said, I take it everywhere I go. He said, I'm a fisherman. He said, I'm never without one. And he said, I aren't leaving without this. So they said, well, I'm afraid you can't take it. And Matt looked at me and he gave me one of those looks. And I knew there was about 2% sympathy, 98% determination. World War III was just about to happen if I couldn't persuade the authorities. Anyway, with a little bit of diplomacy, we managed to get the knife handed over. With great reluctance from Matt, it went out of his possession into the possession of the pilots, and the pilots looked after it until we got back this side and Matt was reunited. But there was a very sticky moment there for a moment, and I thought the Lethbridge temper was just about to flare. Newquay would have been a different place to this day. But I've lots of fond and really friendly memories of Matt, and I'm sure the family are extremely proud that this day is going to see the naming of the Matt Lethbridge. So could I invite Pat, Lucy and Jean to come up and do the naming ceremony for us? Yeah.
Have I got to get it ready?
We want to be clear of the name.
Yeah.
Just on the, yeah. Yeah, but you will, Mum.
It's
Against the wind.
all right.
It will now, I expect, because it's not cold.
It's all right. You just say it. All right, ready?
I think you've done that before.
We didn't spill a drop.
We're a bit quicker than that, Jane.
They are.
All right, you say it.
I named this boat Matt Lethbridge. May God bless her and all who sail in her. Amen.
Yeah, wonderful.
Got your new jacket on.
Several years ago, when Mr. Roy Jenkins, Sheila Thomas's father, was drowned fishing, Roy was a big schoolmate of Dad's, and they'd been out in the lifeboat searching for them and of course hadn't found them. And the next morning when Dad went to go fishing, on the floor in front of him by the running line was a silver St Christopher medallion, and he picked it up and put it in his pocket because he felt as if it had been sent from Roy. And from then on, he always carried it in his pocket on a piece of string because he wasn't a jewellery man. And Mum used to have to make a hole in his pocket to tie the string through so that he wouldn't lose it. And so when the Robert Edgar lifeboat came here, Dad and I went and hid an old St Christopher in one of the seams of the overhead lockers of the boat so that it wouldn't get lost or found, and so that there would always be a St Christopher medallion on the boat. And so today we want to do the same thing for the rib because we feel that Dad would have liked to have done that, so we have a St Christopher to put in safekeeping on the rib.